So let's move on to our two big stories of the week in group chat. We're going to do a double dose of group chat this week because there's a story that at least personally I really wanted to talk about, and I'm the host, so I get to decide these things. I'm using my executive power. But there was also a story that we simply could not avoid talking about, and that is the Galaxy Note 7. Chris, would you like to sort of give us a quick rundown of, a too long didn't read version of the
Chris
nonsense?
reviewed the phone for us, by the way, for people out there.
I did review the phone. I gave it one of the highest review scores we've ever given anything, which, in fairness, is kind of a bad look on me now.
But most publications did review it very well.
Yes, and I don't think there's any way for any of us to have known that this was going to happen.
Yeah,
because holy shit! What is happening, guys?
Did anybody's review units burst into flames on them?
No, the timing was very convenient. So basically, to give you guys a sense of what happened, if you have not been paying attention, the Galaxy Note came out, I believe, mid-August, and to very positive reviews. A couple weeks later, we start seeing reports on social media that these things are sort of bursting into flames. They're not exploding, they're not going off like bombs, but they're definitely smoldering and cracking and sort of catching fire, and that was cause enough for concern that Samsung waited for a long time. Maybe not a long time, but what felt like a long time in the context of sort of stopping production and issuing a recall. This is around IFA time, which is late August, September. They finally get enough reports saying, okay, well, we have to do this. They issue the recall notice. They take a little more time than I think was prudent to work with U.S. regulatory bodies on getting Americans to get their phones back. That's fine. They took what seemed like decisive action at the time and went for it. The problem is, I think the execution was a little hit or miss. They issued a couple software updates meant to cap the limit of power that you could charge these phones to, but one of them didn't make it to America. Maybe the other one didn't make it either.
And without any real proof or convincing proof that would address the core problem.
Yeah.
Correct. So they've taken some small steps to sort of mitigate and help people out in the process. FedEx and UPS for a little while would not even touch these phones. They would not allow these devices into their transport networks to get them anywhere because they were concerned. And now Samsung has basically just cut off around the world all sales and exchanges and production of this phone. It's functionally dead right now, which is frankly insane considering this was the device they were counting on for the latter half of 2016 to help them kill it. The S7 and the S7 Edge were really great starts early on in the year. This was going to be the device that just brought it all home in the holidays, and it's gone.
And this really hurts them, right? I mean, it not only hurts their bottom line in that this is now one of their big flagship devices that's just not going to be sold anymore. It's done.
It's a waste in every sense of the word. It's environmentally wasteful. It's a waste for Samsung's profits.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a very expensive fuck up at this point,
right?
And there's no other way to describe it.
Exactly. Early estimates put the cost of the recall at about $1 billion. That has since ballooned to closer to $2, maybe even a little over $2 billion. That's $2 billion US dollars, not even factoring the supposedly $17 billion in lost sales that Samsung is now staring at dead in the face because of all of this.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up our coverage here, and it says that it looks like they're going to lose out on $2.34 billion. That's what they're saying in their
just purely as a function of the recall itself.
Yeah, something like that. This is from their earnings report.
The earnings report, by the way, strangely okay.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. Here's the thing: is the earnings report is largely pre Note 7 debacle.
Right.
What they're saying is expect a loss of $2.34 billion in the next 3-month period. So this could get a lot worse.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the recycling thing a little bit. This environmental stuff. Do you want to touch on that a bit, Dana?
Yeah, so credit where it's due. Motherboard was really on top of this story. They spoke to some experts. And, I mean, the bottom line is that electronic recycling is still a fairly nascent field. And there are certain components of the phone that can't be recycled. Rare earth materials, no less. So it's all a waste. It's all a shame. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing like we've seen, photos and heard about these sort of like digital graveyards and stuff where like all of America's unused and tossed out electronics end up. And there's probably going to need to be like just a dedicated dumping ground for all of the Galaxy Note 7s at this point. It's going to be like the ET of cell phones.
Except I don't think in 25 years people are going to dig these things up and take them home and turn them on.
No, because in 25 years, wherever they've buried them, it probably will have burst into flame. Just the entire place. It's just going to be a giant fire.
Oh, wow, that's grim.
I mean,
this has been a really dark show.
I mean, you're all familiar with Centralia,
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that coal fire underground still burning?
Oh, yeah, that is still a thing. There's going to be a town built on top of the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 graveyard one day. And it's just going to all catch fire. And people are going to go there and take photos, and it's going to be a weird, morbid tourist attraction. It's going to be great.
What I really want to ask you guys is, like, yes, this has hurt Samsung financially, but it also has damaged their reputation.
Oh, yeah, it's
right.
Not done
the
for
level
them.
of trust that Samsung has worked, I think, really hard over the past few years to build. Like, there's a level of quality in their devices that they've aspired to and delivered on, and people have responded very well to that. Now there's a huge black mark on that record.
Right,
How do you think they bounce back from that?
Like Terrence was saying, that this is the holiday season that we're coming up on.
Yeah.
And people could, if they wanted a phone, buy the Galaxy S7. It's not explosive. We gave that a great review.
And to be fair and to be clear, we have not heard any reports of that exploding on people. There's been no reports of that just bursting in flames.
But why should they buy that?
That's
going to be an enduring question.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Samsung.
even beyond that, why would you buy a Galaxy S8? Like, how could you ever be sure? The impression that I'm getting right now, and the thing that is really most shocking to me, is that Samsung on some level, like, doesn't seem to really know what's wrong. Like, they issued replacement units, and those blew up too. So whatever they thought the underlying issue was not it.
Well, there was a report that came out yesterday, I want to say, basically that just said, like, Samsung's engineers can't recreate this problem. They haven't been able to figure it out at all.
Yeah, what the like, this is so bogglingly it's so mind-boggling I can't even say the word.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that this is happening is just so out of the blue and so unexpected for me that I'm having honestly kind of a hard time wrapping my head around it. Like, batteries are, I think, the most important component of a phone. Samsung has made batteries for years that work fine. There must have been a changeover at some point. Like, these aren't runaway chemical reactions that they've, like, never seen before, right? Like, is that possible?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing, is we're still kind of learning about this too. Like, this is an ongoing story. This is far from done. We're going to be doing plenty more reporting on it. Like, I don't think any of us think that this is anywhere near over.
Oh man, it's a real shame too, because I loved the Galaxy. I loved that phone.
You did. You gave it a great score.
It's perhaps my favorite Android phone of all time. And
that seems crazy to me.
I still actually have my original Note 7 review unit. They've asked me to send it back. I've been traveling and I haven't been able to find, like, the parts, so I haven't given it back to them.
You still have an apartment, right?
Yeah, okay. I plugged it in, by the way, recently, just to get a sense of, like, how lucky or not am I.
You are a crazy person.
We do not endorse that.
Yeah,
well,
if you still have a Galaxy Note 7, don't plug it in. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't be. This is, I think, maybe the running theme of this show. People, don't do what I do.
No,
it's all bad.
You're a terrible role model.
That said, I did plug it in, try to charge it for a while, and it just, like, refused to take a charge. So I'm, like, wondering if this isn't going to go south real quick if I try that again. So
did you leave that at home today?
Yeah,
okay.
I did. Cannot stress this enough, people. I'm a bad person. You should not do what I do.
The other thing is, though, this leaves, like, a giant hole in the market. Like, this doesn't just hurt Samsung. It shakes up the whole Android ecosystem. Because, I mean, Samsung is the biggest maker of Android phones, right?
Yeah, by volume, I believe that's still true.
Yeah. So, and
not many other Note type phones.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Samsung built the Note niche, like this weird gimmick.
LG copied it briefly and doesn't.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody at this point has kind of copied it to an extent.
Sure, but
even
I think
Apple.
What was really sort of special about the Note wasn't even really the Note stuff, which, as you've pointed out, other people have tried with varying levels of success. Like, the Note, it's fine, it's cool. What really sort of grabbed me about the Note 7, and I think this is the case for a lot of other sort of reviewers and critics, and even just consumers too, is that it might be the first time Samsung has really built what feels like a seamless, cohesive device. And that's they're reaching, I would argue, sort of like Apple level, an Apple sort of level of design and quality. And that just, I mean, that's huge for Android and for Samsung. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of great smartphones out there. The HTC 10 is lovely, and a lot of people still really like the LG V20, which is coming out and actually really cool in its own way. But do any of them have the sort of star power that the Note 7 did? Not really, I would argue.
So my one last question before we move on is, does this come at an opportune time for Google, though, with the Pixel and Pixel XL hitting the market?
I mean, they're going to take every advantage of this as they can. They're not going to be negative about it, obviously, because Samsung has been and remains an important Android partner. But, I mean, it's so easy now to say, hey, that was a great big smartphone that you can't get anymore. Check out this sweet Pixel XL.
And I think Google is at an advantage, not just because critics have already said that its phones seem promising, but because Google is a brand that a lot of people know and respect. I would say that there's still an opportunity for underdog HTC if it can figure out how to promote its already really good phones. And then you have companies like OnePlus and Huawei that are lesser known but doing good work, and I would say increasingly good work. So they're not going to sit still, and they're not going to not take advantage of this.
No,
opportunity.
I expect everybody is probably going to. And also, we should be fair that what is good for the Pixel and Pixel XL is good for HTC as well.
The Pixel right now in the U.S. is also a Verizon exclusive unless you buy it.
Unless you buy it.
So there's room for other players to get in there also.
Although it's not hard to buy it unlocked, and you can finance it and all that stuff. Which,
you can also buy it unlocked and use it with Verizon just fine. So maybe do that.
Yeah,
like that's the one piece of advice I'll dole out there that people should probably follow.
I pre-ordered mine through Verizon. I contemplated canceling my pre-order. I'm choosing at this point to take Verizon at their word when they say they're going to push out updates at the same time they go to the unlocked ones, that the handset will come unlocked anyway, and that it's not going to have any unremovable bloatware. Let's find out if our corporate overlords break their promise.
Can't unlock that bootloader though. Can't throw on some sweet ROMs, my dude.
That's okay. I don't do that anymore. Okay. I haven't installed a custom ROM on a phone since I want to say maybe the Galaxy Nexus, but probably before that.
I mean, like I'm generally in the same camp, and I think that's just a testament to how like good manufacturer software has gotten. Like, it's obviously not perfect. I still will always prefer stock, but like, man, it's so much less obtrusive and annoying and like suicide inducing.
I think the Nexus, actually, the Galaxy Nexus was the last one I did a custom ROM on, if only because it was when they stopped supporting it.
Did you have a Verizon Galaxy Nexus?
Yes.
Me too.
And so I went
that thing
and cracked the bootloader so that I could install the most recent version of vanilla Android.
Do you remember how late they got that thing too? Like, Galaxy Nexus was announced in Hong Kong like September or something, and the Galaxy Nexus didn't hit Verizon until like December.
Wikipedia?
I remember that it was December. I bought it for myself for my birthday. I was like, "Happy birthday to me!"
Where are these facts stored?
I was like a Verizon. I have a lot of like memories tied into that phone because, like, I got that phone in December as like a Christmas gift for me and another person involved in a failed relationship. So this was like, we're gonna get a family plan. We're gonna get some sweet Galaxy Nexi. We're gonna throw on some like really sweet widgets and stuff and enjoy ice cream sandwich. And just like that relationship fell apart, so did that phone. In Verizon's eyes, anyway. So hey,
that's as good a place.
That is more of an answer than I was expecting.
I think that is as good a place to end that conversation as any.
Unlike this microphone, there was no filter in my head.
Let's move on to our last topic of the week and our second dose of group chat. And this one is going to be a bit of a downer because I always like ending the show on a downer, guys. It's my personal thing.
Well, this whole show has been kind of a downer.
It's true. It's been kind of a...
Which I appreciate because I luxuriate in like... suffering.
If you're looking for a tech podcast where you can come to feel bad about yourself and your life,
and the world,
this is it, and the world. The Engadget Podcast is the tech podcast for you. Really doing a great job of selling this. So let's go back to Friday night last week.
The good old days.
The good old days. And let's just mention that there was a certain tape of a certain presidential candidate bragging about certain things, those certain things being sexually assaulting women. And this kind of sparked a whole movement on Twitter that started with Kelly Oxford, who is an author, who asked women to tweet at her about their first assaults. She said, women, tweet me your first assaults. They're not just stats. I'll go first. An old man on the city bus grabs my pussy, smiles at me. I'm 12. Now, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of responses to this that are worth reading. And then eventually a hashtag rose out of this, hashtag not okay. And we're going to address that one in specific in a minute. But I kind of wanted to address this bigger idea of hashtag activism in general. And especially because this past weekend and early this week was sort of a wash in these sorts of things. It wasn't just Kelly Oxford and sexual assaults and the not okay hashtag. There was also World Mental Health Day, which was a hashtag going around in which people were sharing their experiences with therapy and dealing with mental illness. There was National Coming Out Day, in which the LGBT community was sharing their stories about how they came out and coming together. There's Everyday Sexism. This is 2016, which is a little bit more of an obtuse one, but was started by Michael Lau, who is from the New York Times, which was asking Asian Americans to share their stories of encountering racism in their lives. And so I just kind of wanted to go back. I think, this hashtag activism thing really kind of came to the fore, I want to say, during my mind is blanking. I'm having a really good day, guys.
The Arab Spring?
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana, for being my backup there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's when it really kind of came about, right? That's when it started getting first attention?
I think, it's hard to say exactly when, but that does feel like one of the earliest instances of us tech reporters talking about Twitter being used as a tool for social movements.
And there were other ones around the Arab Spring that I can't quite remember off the top of my head. As you can tell, I'm clearly very prepared for this podcast. But I think one of the things that struck me as interesting is you had all of these sorts of movements. You had the Arab Spring. You had a sort of flood of them in the aftermath of that. But very quickly, people kind of turned on the idea of hashtag activism as being not super effective.
I mean, I sort of see where that criticism comes from, but I don't know, like the issues that often get brought up in these sorts of events, I think there's a very sort of profound validity in just being able to talk about it. Like,
yeah.
you might not always get the answers you're looking for, but it's sort of nice to have a space where hopefully you feel free and sort of independent and comfortable enough to just sort of air your grievances, share your experiences. I don't know. There's something very powerful about that to me, and that is sort of what keeps me coming back to these platforms, even though I think in general a lot of the people on them can be kind of terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the early criticism of it was based around the fact that, they would say that tweeting a hashtag isn't doing anything. You should be going out into your community and organizing and doing these other things and be an active participant and be part of the solution and not just like a passive observer. And I think perhaps for certain movements that's a fair criticism, But I think it's starting to find its home now, it seems like. Passing around hashtags to stop an oil pipeline probably isn't going to be super effective. Like, go call your representative, send a letter to your congressperson, whatever. That's going to be more effective than just a hashtag. But what's different about these other ones that we were just talking about, the not okay and this is 2016, is it's less about I think, actively trying to stop something and more about just creating a level of comfort and encouraging people to come forward and spread awareness about things.
I think, right. I think there were two big things going on this weekend, even in the wake of the Trump tapes. So I think, and you can sort of see this in some of the original headlines about the Trump tapes. They were a little reined in terms of the language they used. They said, they focused on the fact that Trump was being quote unquote lewd or
lewd.
vulgar, and I think it took women, and with the help of men were really in solidarity here, but it took women, I think, emphasizing their experiences to say, no, this wasn't just that he was being inappropriate or unpresidential. He was bragging about assault, and I think that got through to a lot of people who maybe wouldn't have perceived it that way, especially given the pretty tame headlines that first ran when the story broke. And then you had men. This was, I think, an example of #activism too. Pushing back and talking about what locker room talk means to them.
Yeah.
And that at times felt like a funny meme because I think there was some humor in there and the ways men countered that. But I saw that as men in solidarity saying, no, what Trump did and said wasn't okay. And yes, that does, that was assault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's take it back to that specific instance then for a little bit, and the not okay hashtag and Kelly Oxford's request for people to tweet at her their assaults. If you really want to ruin your day, and I do suggest that everybody ruin their day and do this, to be clear, you should go read the responses to this because it's horrifying. And I like to think that I'm a fairly enlightened guy as a general rule. I thought that I understood, but I clearly didn't. Like, I didn't get it. I definitely spent hours pouring through these things, including seeing responses from people who I consider friends, who I'm close with, and like seeing that people describe being groped, molested, and assaulted, and often at a very young age, is, I don't think it's the sort of thing that most men realize happens as often as it does. And I mean, even for me, again, a guy who likes to think that he's fairly enlightened, it was very eye-opening.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot to take in, especially around the Trump tapes. I don't know. It's very difficult for me because these are your friends, your colleagues, the people in your life. And to sort of to get a sense of their life, to get a sense of what has shaped them in such a visceral way. Yeah. Like that, I think it speaks to my willingness and like desire to be a little scared by things every day. Because there are so many issues sort of at play in invisible ways that seem more acceptable to talk about in the context of like #activism than they were before. Like, you're not going to sit down with your friend most likely and just have them pour your heart out. But if they're feeling a sense of anonymity or comfort because they're speaking to people sort of at a remove, like you get insight into really important things without even really looking for it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, it sounds sort of trite to say, but it speaks to the power of these mediums. It speaks to the power of Twitter as a form of raising awareness for things and of kind of opening people's eyes to stuff. I don't know how much more there is to say about this, if I'm honest. I mean, everybody should go read Nicole Lee's piece. There will obviously be a link to it in the description of this. It's short, sweet, but very good. And she shares some stories of her own, which are fairly harrowing. And, thank you for doing that, Nicole. Any final thoughts on this, Dana?
I have a thought. This may open a Pandora's box, and I don't even know how tech-related it is specifically.
That's fine.
But
we're
I think one of the unique things about this situation was, so I think, and preface, not all men, but some men when they hear stories like this, I think are very quick to distance themselves and say, well, it's not me. I don't do this.
Yeah.
And we know that. We know that. But in this case, this was a rare case or a fairly uncommon case where it wasn't a woman or women maligning Trump. It was Trump making other men look bad in this tape that went viral. And I think the fact that it was Trump maligning his fellow men changed the conversation a bit and allowed men to not get so defensive, but join in solidarity in a way that I found really refreshing and helpful.
Chris?
Really quickly, I just want to dig into something you mentioned earlier. There is a tendency for some people to look at sort of piling it on hashtags as sort of ineffectual and almost cowardly because you don't have the guts to sort of put yourself out there in a more physical way. But I think that's really kind of an unfair way to look at it, because maybe that's not for you, but the signal boost that you provide to the people you care about, maybe this provides them with the context necessary to make a decision that they wouldn't have otherwise made.
Yeah.
There's no real, like, you really can't discount the people around you and sort of the effect that your opinion has on them and vice versa. So I don't know. I don't think that jumping in and sharing these things is cowardly or lazy in any way. Like, it takes a specific kind of courage, and maybe it's not as deep-rooted as the one that gets you out the door and holding up a sign at a rally. Yeah. But it's still important, and it's still helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of hope that this puts that argument to rest, because I've heard the same thing, too, that, hashtag activism is for lazy and cowardly people. But go ahead and tell Kelly Oxford that she's cowardly for telling the world about when she was groped when she was 12. Yeah. Fuck you.
Yeah.
So let's leave it on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys. Good show.
Boy.
Good show. Dana, where can the fine people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Dana Wallman at twitter.com. That's my full name, no space. I promise I won't be tweeting about John Candy's ghost.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chris?
You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Velasco, CHRIS, V as in Victor, ELA, Z as in Zebra, CO. I promise I just probably won't tweet at all.
That's a pretty fair promise. I like that. Mm-hmm. You can find me at Terrence O'Brien, lots of E's, no A's. This last segment of the show is probably a preview of what you can expect from my Twitter. It's going to be real dark, guys. But as always, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And please send us your feedback, your comments, your concerns. You can find us on Twitter at Engadget, or you can email us at podcast@engadget.com. Please subscribe to us in iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Rate us on there. Rating us helps other people find us, and we want more people to listen to us for obvious reasons.